And a very good afternoon to everybody. We have quite a few attendees who have registered today, so I'm just going to give those who are joining us at 3 o'clock just an opportunity to get in. I can see those attendees numbers shooting up while people connect, so those of you who have already joined, if you just give us a few minutes while we let those last few people join in on the webinar today. Michelle, brilliant, you're getting the hang of this. I'm starting to see some questions come in. You know, fantastic to see that you are familiar with that. I'll go through that in a little bit more detail where people can ask questions. I'm really hoping that today I have tried to really shorten my webinar so that we've got quite a bit of time at the end so that we can go through those all important questions, because I think that's really, really important, so that everybody can you know, hear the questions, because it's like everything. If one person is asking it, there's probably at least another 3 or 4 people in the room who want to ask the same question. So well done, Michelle, for getting that first question in. I do have a couple of other questions that have come in via email, which I would also like to get to today. So I can see those numbers are quite high up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start without any further ado. So thank you very much to everybody who has taken the time to join me today. My name is Angela Clay and I'm from HR for UK, and I'm an employment law solicitor and provide HR support and guidance. Today's webinar, what we are going to be covering is how to use the flexible furlough scheme for your business, managing staff and making your claim. But of course, as any of you who join my webinars, I'm going to cover much more than that. So hopefully I do get to cover a lot of questions and answers that you may have that come out of it as well. So today is Friday, the 26th of June, and it's 3 o'clock, and I'm going to be here with you for the next hour, possibly a little bit longer, depending on those questions and answers that come out, and hopefully I'll be able to provide you with a lot of insight into the flexible furlough scheme and how you can use it for your business. So HR for UK, who are we? HR for UK is a leading HR provider providing HR and employment law support, payroll, pensions, health and safety support and guidance to all our clients, and our clients are across the nation, as far north as what we are south, east and west. We've got over 30 years of experience, and we've got some fantastic 5-star reviews on our website. I know I say it every week, but I'm really proud of the reviews that we get, and I would strongly encourage you to go and have a look and read for yourself what other people say about our services. So, you know, do go and have a look. Of course, our website is www.hrforuk.com. I will cap that up again. By all means, if you have any questions, email me in. It's info@hrforuk.com, or if you want to have a chat to one of us, the number is 01455 444 222. So just a little bit about me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm an HR and employment law specialist. I'm the managing director of HR for UK, and my role in this crisis that we're in is to help businesses like yours come out of this pandemic successfully. And you know, my vision has been since the start, and it always will be, should I say, is to make sure that your business comes out of this pandemic crisis successfully. And the way I'm going to do that is by offering you clear, professional, practical advice and support. And that support is that all-important personal support, handheld support in your specific circumstances, your specific issues with your organisation in mind, not just a blanket sort of advice. So the big questions for today that I'm going to be covering is how to use the flexible furlough scheme, what records you need to keep, and how you make those claims. I'm also going to be looking at the options that you have about bringing staff back to work, and I'm also going to be just recapping a little bit on the importance of staffing, understanding those staffing levels that you're going to need. So please do ask questions. There is a question box on your platform. So please do ask those questions. Those questions are really, really valuable, not only to you who's asking the question, but to everybody else who is on this webinar. Because as I said earlier, if there's one person wanting to ask a question, there's probably at least 3 or 4 other people who have a similar or the same question. So please do ask those questions. It doesn't have to be related to the specific webinar. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And, you know, of course, you know, I'll be happy to discuss specific business concerns that you may have if you so wish. So do pop those into the question box, and I look forward to answering those a little bit later. We're always open to suggestions, so if you are looking at something specific that you want us to cover in future webinars, please do pop it in. We are always open to suggestions, because if these webinars are only as good as they are if they are what you want them to be. So any suggestions, we would certainly welcome those coming in. So please do let us have that. Let us have them. I think I should put my teeth in this afternoon. So just a quick reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and you will get a recording of this today's session. You will also get the accompanied questions with the full answers that will come out to you during the course of the early parts of next week. We do have our library of previous webinars that you can, of course, go back and watch as many times as you need to. And if there's any questions that come out of it, you know, do feel free to get in contact. So again, just a quick reminder on where and how you can get in touch with us. Our website is www.hr4uk.com. Our email address is info@hr4uk.com. And of course, you've got our telephone number, which is 01455 444 222, and one of my colleagues will be more than happy to help you. So let's get on to the nitty-gritty of today. And as I'm sure many of you have been eagerly waiting and anticipating for the flexible furlough agreement, and I know I've been saying to you that I will get it to you. I've been waiting for those all-important Treasury directions, which, can you believe it, only came out at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. It's a 30-page document. I have had a very quick glance through it, so I'm going to have a look at that at the end. I haven't had a chance to digest it, but hopefully by the end of today, certainly over the weekend, I will be going through that Treasury direction to make sure that the flexible furlough agreement is suitable for your needs. There are a couple of questions that are still hanging over me, but hopefully I'll have those answers by the time I've had an opportunity to read the directions. So let's move on. So on the 1st of July, next week, Wednesday, businesses will be able to bring back staff on a flexible basis using the flexible furlough scheme. So that means that you will be able to still receive that vital lifeline of the government funding. For July, you will still receive 100% support from the government, because, of course, from August, it starts scaling back that level of support. And I'll recap on that a little bit later, just to remind you what those levels are going to be. But July provides you with an ideal opportunity to put your operational plans into place, testing the waters in terms of your staffing levels. And July is the last chance, as I said earlier, where you can have the full support of the government providing 80% of cover in relation to the furloughed hours. Now, we're going to talk quite a bit, and I'm going to talk a bit about the normal working hours, and I'm going to talk about furloughed hours. When I am talking about furloughed hours, that means the hours that employees normally work are required to work by their contracts of employment, but have not been provided with work. In other words, they are staying at home, but they are still going to receive their furlough pay. So when I'm talking about furlough hours, that is what I mean. I will recap again during the webinar, just to keep reminding you the difference between the hours that I'm going to be talking about. So to help you prepare for the flexible furlough scheme, businesses will need to really have a look realistically what their cash flow is going to be able to afford, because a lot of businesses would have been completely closed during the lockdown. Some businesses would have been able to operate on a skeleton staff, but if there is very limited or no income coming in, there is going to be a significant pressure on that all-important cash flow. So assessing your operational needs and planning your staffing levels is really, really going to be especially important over the next couple of weeks. But certainly July gives us an opportunity to dip our toe in the water, to see how it's going to work, still giving us the opportunity to be able to make further changes or make radical changes. And again, we will talk about that in a little bit more detail. So again, it's not just about looking at July. We need to start looking at August, because of course August is when the flexible furlough, where the furlough scheme funding is starting to be scaled back, and where employers are starting to have to contribute towards the wage bill in having to pay the auto enrolment contributions and the national insurance contributions, the employer contributions. So we've only got 4 months left, so let's make sure that we make the best of the next 4 months. They are going to be complicated 4 months, so I think we need to be prepared for quite a bumpy ride, but the more prepared you are, the more planning you put in place, the easier and the better it is going to be for you. So let's have a look at the flexible furlough scheme, what records you need to keep and how to make those claims. So from the 1st of July, you will be able to bring previously furloughed employees back into work on a part-time basis, and you will still be able to continue to claim 80% of wages for their normal hours that they are not working. So those are those furloughed hours until the end of August. So the key point to take away from there is the employees that you're bringing back into part-time work under the flexible furlough scheme, they have to have previously been on the furlough scheme. If you didn't furlough them before and you didn't make a claim, it is too late for you to use those employees and use those use the flexible furlough scheme to be able to claim back that funding. So again, they have to be previously furloughed employees for you to be able to use the flexible scheme. So you will be able to decide, so as a business owner, you will be able to decide how many hours, what shift patterns, how many days your employee is going to be coming back into work. Do remember that the hours that the employee is working, you will be responsible for paying their wages, including the national insurance contributions and the auto enrolment for the hours that they do work. So that will become your responsibility while they come back under the flexible furlough scheme. So this means that employees can work as much or as little as that you need. There is no minimum time where an employee needs to be on those furlough hours. Unlike the original scheme, the encouragement is actually to get people back into work, start working more hours, and to reduce those furlough hours. So again, those arrangements that you have will need to be agreed with the employee before they start working those flexible working hours, and you need to give them an indication of at least what 1 week of that flexible working arrangement is going to look like. So you might decide once you've done all your planning, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about planning in a moment, but you might decide that actually I'm going to plan week on week at a time. This week I'm going to start small and I'm going to slowly scale it up rather than starting big and then having to scale it down. So my top tip is really to start small and scale up. And I'm going to talk a little bit more detail around how do you actually know where to start. So we will come back to that. But the working arrangements, you need to agree with your employees before you start. It must cover at least 1 week period, and that's because that ties in with the claim. It doesn't mean that you have to, so it doesn't mean that you have to have set plans for 1 week at a time, but it does help. You can plan further ahead. If you've got your planning in place, that will help you facilitate on what you're going to need going forward. So again, planning is quite key in terms of identifying what staffing levels you're going to require. So again, you're going to be dealing with a lot of data over the next 4 months, and that data is going to be what the original working hours are, what the worked hours are, so the actual hours that are working, and secondly, you're going to be having to look at what are the furlough hours. Certainly in August, you're going to have to look at you know, the removal of the employer contributions for national insurance and the removal of the auto enrolment contributions. Of course, in September, you then need to have that additional complexity of only having 70% contribution coming from the government with your top up of the 10%. That only relates to the furloughed hours. So again, when you start looking at October, it gets a little bit more complex because, of course, again, the government reduces their contribution to 60%. You need to pick up that additional 20% for those furloughed hours. So it is a little bit of a scale where one goes up, the other will go down, and it's getting that balance and making sure that you've got the correct data, because working with the correct data will ensure that you are making the correct claim to get that funding back from the government through your claim. A reminder again that HMRC will be doing retrospective audits, so it's really important to make sure that the data that you are using to get those claims in is really you know, accurate data to ensure that you don't end up having to repay some of the money that has been paid back to you. So if your employees are unable to return to work or you do not have work for them, they can remain on furlough under the existing terms. So that means that there is no worked hours. So there is no hours where the employer has to make those payments. However, it will still be, the scaling back of the scheme will still apply to those who are on the original scheme. So what I'm saying there is, whilst your employees may not come into work because there is no work or they are unable to come into work, you will still have that sliding scale that will impact you. So again, whilst they can't come into work or there isn't work, at the back of your mind, there still must be some sort of thought process going on, is what are you going to do about those employees? What are you going to do about that situation? So again, those are the thoughts that you start thinking about. And again, I'm going to cover that in a little bit more detail, you know, in today's webinar. So again, just a reminder that employees will continue to receive at least 80% of their salary, and employers will need to start contributing towards the costs of paying, start contributing towards paying those wage bills. So wage bills are going to start going up. So let's have a look at what records you need to keep, regardless of what scheme you are on, whether you are on the original scheme or whether you're on the flexible furlough scheme. You need to make sure that you can make sure that you get those claims. You are dealing with the correct and accurate data. So keeping a record of that data for a minimum of 5 years is essential. You will have to keep a record of the agreement that you have with the employees. So again, if you are moving employees from the original scheme to the flexible furlough scheme, you will need to have a revised agreement with them explaining what that flexible furlough agreement scheme means to the employee. And really, fundamentally, it's them coming back into work on a part-time basis. Their remuneration is going to be split between full pay because they are working and the furlough pay because of the furlough hours, which is subsidised by the government scheme. So you will need to make sure that you have accurate records, you have got those agreements that are kept, and all of this is kept for a minimum of 5 years. And I think that's an indication of HMRC going back and reviewing these claims retrospectively. So as I've already identified, that managing the two furlough schemes simultaneously is going to present a number of administrative issues. It's going to be quite administrative heavy, so quite onerous on employers, but also it's going to have that financial implication because, of course, from August, it's going to start affecting your contribution. So you're going to have to start making money. So once you start putting this together, it's quite a balancing act to make sure that you get it right, to make sure that you are making sure that both schemes are supporting your business and you're supporting your employees to get them back into work, so you can kickstart that economy, kickstart getting everything going. And it's a vicious circle because the one depends on the other. And how do you strike that balance? And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But having, you know, the two schemes running, it is going to be, you know, provide quite a lot of challenges for businesses, and we are here to help you with that. We are here to help you put measures in place to help you ensure that you can manage those administrative tasks that need to be carried out, and also help you with those financial burdens in terms of how you are going to time your claims to make sure you get that money in when you need it. And you know, it is going to get more and more complicated as we start getting into this furlough scheme. You know, the flexibility of it, how you start utilizing it to your best advantage to get your business up and running, so that we can get back into whatever the new normal is. So again, just a quick reminder on how to claim. Again, you have to have been registered for your PAYE online. So again, that would have needed to have been done with your first RTR submission done before the 19th of March, which seems a long time ago. But for the flexible furlough scheme, if you haven't got that, you're not going to be able to claim. You've got to make sure you've got a UK bank account. You've got your PAYE reference number. You will, of course, need each employee's national insurance number, the start of their furlough period and the end of their furlough period. You will need to have the full amounts that you are claiming, which will include the employee wages, national insurance contributions up until the 31st of July, sorry, for claims up until the 31st of July, and employer pension contributions for claims up until the 31st of July. And of course, the usual contact details in case HMRC need to get in contact with you. So if you are claiming for employees who are flexibly furloughed, you will need to have the agreed arrangements with the employee. So again, if you have if you have a collective arrangement, you need to have that in place, or individual arrangements, you need to have that flexible furlough agreement in place. You need to keep that written record, so really important to keep that written record to confirm the flexible furlough arrangement. For the claim period that you're making the claim, you will also need the number of the usual hours that your employee would normally work. So that was pre-lockdown days. You will need to have the number of hours your employee has worked or will work in the claim period. And you will also need to keep a record of those furloughed hours that the employee has been furloughed for that claim period. So again, quite a lot of information that you need at hand, but again, it can be quite simple. We can provide you with an easy guide, an easy calculator on how to calculate and have all that information at hand when you want to come and make that all-important claim. We have the flexible furlough calculator, which you can use to be able to accurately calculate your claims and know what grant you're going to be getting back in terms of that. So, you know, there is help available. Don't struggle on your own. It's really, you know, if help is there, take it with all hands. You know, don't struggle on your own, because we know it is going to get complicated and complex. So we are here to help you. So just a quick reminder on the timing of making those claims. As we start going through these different step changes over the course of the next 4 months, it's really important that you have those key dates identified as to when the claims need to be made. So again, you can make a claim in advance of an imminent payroll or at the point you are running that payroll. Just a quick reminder, the turnaround from the point of making the claim to getting the money in the bank is normally around 6 days. HMRC are really on top of it, and those claims, those repayment claims, are coming through a lot quicker. So again, when you are about to do an imminent payroll run, or when you are actually processing that payroll run, that's the time when you need to put in your claim. So do remember, you can't make more than one claim during a claim period, and claim for all the employees at one period. You can't go back and, you know, make one claim for your original furlough staff and then making a second claim for the flexible furlough. It all needs to be put in one claim, which is why I'm saying it's starting to get really complicated, quite complex with what you can claim for who and for what period and what month it's falling in. So again, just a reminder that. So you have until the 31st of July to make any claims in respect of any furlough period up until the end of the 30th of June. So 31st of July for claims ending the 30th of June. Any claims under the flexible scheme will need to be made monthly in terms of the month with which that flexible furlough is being made. Obviously, if you've got anybody on your original scheme tied into the month that you are claiming, because you will only be able to make a claim for July in July, August in August, September in September, and October in October. You will not be able to make a claim for furloughed hours in July in September. There are quite tight time scales within which the time that you need to make those claims. So have those dates in your diary. Make sure that you don't miss the opportunity to claim back those furloughed hours through the scheme. So again, just without over-egging it, just a reminder that in order to make your claim for those flexible hours, you will need to have the original hours that the employee contractually required to work before you went into lockdown. And there are sort of, when there are varying hours, how you calculate that. I'm not going to go over that again because I think we know that. But again, the claim is to identify what those furloughed hours are. So you will need to know the actual worked hours against the normal working hours, which will give you what those furlough hours are. So again, just reminding you that you do need that flexible furlough agreement in place before the employee starts working those part-time hours. So let's have a look at the options that you have for returning staff back into work. So how can employers adjust their workforce and looking at planning approaches when we're still trying to grapple with these uncertainties, finding ways of maintaining or even increasing your workforce? You might have to decrease. How do you look at flexibility, and how do you look at flexibility for the future? Because we really don't know what and how the economy is going to respond to the uplifting of the lockdown. So workforce planning needs to address that uncertainty. So the only way that you can do that is being flexible yourself. So we're talking about the flexible furlough, and that is talking about the employees working. But as a business, you need to be flexible too, because the only way you are going to be able to instill confidence in your employees and identifying when you are going to be requiring them is planning that flexibility, which is at the very heart of all of this. So let's have a look at ways you can look at organizational flexibility. So this is even before you're getting your staff in. So start looking at the big what if questions. I'm going to call that the what if scenarios. So what if we get a big order in? What if we lose a big client? What if there is a delay in an order coming in? What if there are supply chain issues? Those are the type of what if questions you need to be looking at, and you need to be having a plan in place for all of those potential what if questions, because what is happening today might be different next week. So by having that flexibility planning in place, you will be able to have that corresponding flexibility in planning for the flexibility of staffing levels. So understanding how flexible your business can be will give you an idea on how flexible you can be for your staffing levels. And I think that's a really good starting point. So we've looked at what ifs, and I'm sure I've only mentioned 3 or 4 what if scenarios, but I'm sure all of you are sitting there thinking about, well, I can probably add another half a dozen to that. because every business, every organization will have different what-if scenarios. But just take some time out and looking at some of those what-if scenarios that may be applicable to your business. Start scenario planning. So have a look further ahead at what potential impact larger or smaller controllable changes may have as an impact on your business. So start looking at, different changes. You might be an organization that is being severely impacted by, for example, different scenarios. I don't want to go into sort of political discussions, but there are potential climate change issues. There might be supply chain issues, which perhaps you may or may not have control over. So those are types of scenario planning, because you can only plan what's going on in your own business, but you might have some insight of what's going on in other organizations in your supply chain, which is going to have an impact on your scenario planning. So again, make sure that you have a look at what if questions, and also have a look at that scenario planning of what you know is actually going to happen, or the potential of what may happen, so you can have and adapt your flexibility to be able to adapt and be nimble on responding to those sort of changes. So again, flexibility can be modeled into resourcing models, policies, practice and procedures, and this is going to become embedded in the workforce planning thought process going forward, because again, this is not just about getting your business up and running, it's about making sure that your business is ready, making sure that you've got the staffing levels, making sure that your staff are aware of what flexibility is going to be required, so that when you do contact them at relatively short notice, either upscaling or downscaling the flexibility that you need from them, it's not going to come to them as a surprise. So communication is going to be really key in part of this, flexible workforce planning as we go forward. So let's have a look at how we can build in that flexibility. So many organizations are going to have to make quick changes to their workforce. We saw it historically with having to make those instant changes when we went into lockdown. Coming out of lockdown is being a little bit more challenging, but again, you still need to build that flexibility in, because whilst your business is coming back into production and working, so is everybody else, and it is going to have a domino chain reaction. So flexibility doesn't necessarily appear when you're going to need it the most. So making sure that you build in that flexibility as early on as possible is really going to benefit your business, to make sure that you can survive and you can really rely on your workforce in coming in to work when you're really going to need them, and still using the government flexible furlough scheme to help you for those furloughed hours where you don't have work for employees. So it's all starting to fit together, and it's making sure that you are best placed to be able to fit it all together to make sure that your business comes out of this successfully. So flexibility can be planned into an organization and your workforce, primarily through a number of channels. So it's starting to look at those flexible strategies. So have a look, and I've talked about this so many times in previous webinars. Look at alternative patterns. Have a look at alternative shift patterns, those varied start and finish times, the number of people that you're required to do work of a particular kind at a particular time period. So have a look at those shift patterns. How is that going to work for you to make sure that your business gets the best out of being flexible and having the flexible workforce that's going to be supporting you? Make use of the temporary flexibility. So at the moment, we are using flexible working as a temporary measure. But do remember that actually flexible working has long been in employment law and been available to employees, but it's always been employee-led. For the first time, really, we are looking at flexible working from an employer-led proposition. But do bear in mind that if it's working now, it may well be that an employee might come back to you at a later stage and say, actually, that flexible working pattern worked really well for me. So again, it's building in measures in place if you do face that in the future. So again, looking at adapting work design, your skills, deployment, increase that functionality, make sure that that is where your flexibility is built in really early on, so that you can scale up when you really need it and you can scale back down when you don't. We've certainly got that sort of support over the next 4 months, but again, it's something that you should be having a look at, so that when we come to the 31st of October, when the furlough scheme comes to an end, your business is best placed to be able to carry on from the 1st of November without that financial support. So let's have a look at some other options. So if an employer only uses full-time permanent employees to flex the size of the workforce, sometimes you might need to recruit people, and you're probably thinking, recruitment. Who's recruiting at this point in time? We're actually looking at downscaling. So again, when you're looking at the planning part of your flexibility, start thinking about, am I actually going to need additional workforce? I might not want to be making my existing workforce redundant at this point in time. So maybe you want to start looking at casual workers, getting casual workers in. Perhaps you want to use agency staff or contractors to test the water before you start making permanent decisions about your existing workforce. It may well be that you're thinking, hang on, Angela, I can't actually even afford my current wage bill. I'm actually going to have to start making those difficult decisions about shedding and cutting with the workforce. So, let's have a look at what we need to do in terms of making sure that your workforce is fit for purpose, to make sure that it sees you through when we do start coming out of this and we do need to upscale, your capacity. So flexibility in and where work can be performed. So again, flexibility for employees is just as important for employers. We know when we went into lockdown back in March, the key message was stay at home, work from home if you can. If not, you go on to furlough. That still remains the same. If employees can carry on doing their work from home, that is an obvious way on dealing with flexibility. It has so many benefits for it, not only in terms of work-life balance, but you're probably getting quite a lot more out of your employees because of having that flexibility around working from home. Don't get me wrong, working from home does not work for every role. It doesn't work for every business, but it is something that perhaps if you haven't been looking at it, maybe remote working is something that you need to have a look at as part of your flexible working plan, so that you can make the best of what you've got for your business. So work can be moved from the traditional places of an office. Office space behind me, as you can see, is empty because we have got all our staff remote working. So again, it's having a look at different options on what is available of where staff can work, and just being flexible, being nimble, being able to adapt to what is going to be the best for your business so that you can come out of this successfully. Not everything is going to work for every business. But the key thing about flexibility is it needs to be supported by a leadership culture that pays more attention to continuous employee development. Involve your employees with change. Get them involved. That is the best way that you are going to be able to have employees on side, have employees who are going to be there to be flexible, to support you when you need it, and get in there to help you get the job done so you can scale up and you can start servicing your clients again, start delivering on those all important jobs, manufacturing, services, all of that. You need to, make sure that you get to that. Involve your staff, and we've talked about that before when we were talking about the return to work COVID-19 risk assessment. The more you engage your workforce, the more on side you will have them, the less resistance you will have from them not wanting to come back. So I'm just going to really just quickly recap on the options in terms of what options are available to you. You do have the flexible furlough, you have the original furlough scheme. You still have the option of unpaid leave. So there is still this big question mark over where there is work to be done. I need the workforce back in, but there are still issues surrounding childcare responsibilities, caring responsibilities, and how you deal with that. So that is still very much there as unpaid, or as I say, it is using the original scheme. But of course, as the government support is reduced and the financial contribution from employers starts to bite, you might need to start looking at, putting more and more people who fall into those categories into unpaid. So let's just I'm jumping around a little bit, so I do apologize. So again, just looking at planning for the future, it needs to have flexibility at the heart of what you are doing. Make sure that you plan those shift pattern changes, the work design, because it doesn't happen by itself. You have to plan. The more flexible you can be and the better planning you have, the better success you are going to have coming out of this. So I'm just going to touch on very quickly, because I did mention this earlier on looking at how can I know what my requirements are going to be. So I'm just going to have a look at capacity is what you need to have a look at. So when you are looking at what are my staffing levels going to be, it's going to be supported by the flexibility. So again, what flexibility, how do I actually look at that? Where do I actually start? So let's start looking at what the production capacity is going to look like. So production capacity, it may be quite obvious when you're looking in manufacturing. It's the physical manufacturing of your products. But as a service provider, you also have production capacity. So again, you may be able to get your workforce back, get them up and running. You're producing all these widgets, you're producing all these items in your factories. But if you don't have the supply chain to be able to deliver those items to your clients, you may have an issue. Equally, you may not actually have the orders coming in. So looking at what that production capacity is going to be quite key when you start looking at getting those staffing levels in. Likewise, as a service provider, if you are providing services, you may have the skill force, you might have the skilled individuals there to be able to provide the services, but if demand is down, you're not really going to need all those individuals in to be able to provide that service. So again, you will have to have a look at that production capacity on how it fits into your organization. And we can really break, you can break production capacity down into three sort of categories. So that is productive. So that is where you need to make and deliver on what your levels are. So have a look at what orders have come in, what is already there that needs to be delivered, what needs to go out. This is an area where you absolutely do not want to be considering making cuts, using flexible hours if that is at full capacity. If it's still building up, of course, get that flexibility using the flexible furlough scheme. But this is really an area where you want to be getting a lot more people in, a lot more people involved. You then have sort of the non-productive production capacity. So again, this is where the capacity is there, but we're actually not delivering anything at the moment. So again, it's having a look at, you know, this is an area that may need to be managed. So it's like where everybody is, where you need to put your resource in. You're now looking at that middle bit where perhaps you don't need that resource, you don't need as much resource, but you may be able to redeploy some of those individuals into where you really need people. So again, it's about looking at skill set, looking at workforce, looking at what transferable skills you have within your organization to plug the gap, for want of a better expression, of being able to scale up and scale down as you need. And then you have the idle capacity. This is where there is nothing going on. You know, there is no orders coming in. It falls into neither, you know, the productive capacity or the non-productive capacity. This is where you have idle, collecting dust bunnies, for want of a better description of what's going on. Now, this is perhaps an area where you can start thinking about looking at cost savings. But before you do that, have a look to see if you can diversify your workforce. Is there anybody there that can perhaps go into the non-productive or the productive production capacity of your business? So having a look at that is a really good foundation when you're starting to look at flexibility of your business. How nimble are you going to be? What do you need? What don't you need? Which will then help you in turn looking at the flexibility of your staff, getting them in, which in turn will help you make those all-important decisions on what you need to do for your staffing. And again, using the flexible furlough scheme to be able to support you there. So start by calculating, assessing the existing level of capacity in your business, having a look at those 3 areas, and then start filtering it down. Speak to your managers, speak to them to identify what they need, what they've got in the pipeline. You know, look at orders, break it down into those that are confirmed. Those are almost 100% certain. Those are possible, and have a look at those that perhaps may not go ahead, because this will help you in terms of preparing your business for this influx and getting ready to get back into full swing, which ties into the flexible furlough scheme. It ties into the flexibility of your business, and it ties into having those flexible arrangements with your staff so that you can get them back into work. As I said right early on, get ready for a bumpy ride. Hold on to your seats. It is going to be an up and down. And again, you know, being nimble, being prepared, planning is going to help you to influence your ability to be able to be flexibility. And I think if anybody's been counting on how many times I've used the word flexibility, I'm sure you've probably reached the 100 mark. I'm not going to go back and count all of those. But again, hopefully today I have helped you sort of cover those key areas on, you know, using the flexible furlough scheme, where to start. Start with looking at what you need so you can start building in your planning for the next couple of weeks. So again, I've said it so many times, please don't try and, well, of course you can do it on your own. Don't struggle on your own. There is help available to you. We do have our coronavirus crisis package, which is designed to help you on your individual business, what you are going through, what you are going to need going forward, and how we can help you plan for the future. It may well be that you've gone through all of this, and it may well be that you're thinking, you know what, we really do need to cut those costs. We really do need to make those redundancies. We need to make those decisions, you know, those difficult decisions. Don't make those decisions on your own when help is at hand. So our coronavirus package is specifically designed with you in mind, both from what you need to achieve from a business point of view, but more importantly, how we can help you with that financial side of things and getting you where you need to be. So I promised you that I was going to get to the questions and answers. I really tried to truncate today's session down so we can get to those questions and answers. So I'm going to start off with a couple of questions that have been emailed in, and these have been some really good questions. So Sally Ann, thank you for sending your question in. This is a brilliant question, and I think this is a question that a number of employers are going to be wondering. When we were working under the original scheme, we were actively encouraging businesses to use the ability to serve notice on employees, requesting them to take their annual leave while they were on furlough. The impact of that was that they would be required, so you as an employer would be required to top up their wages to make sure that they received 100% of their salary for those holiday days that they were having. Now that we are moving into the flexible furlough, where staff will be coming in on perhaps 2 days a week, you know, they are reducing their normal working hours by a percentage base, a day base, or an hour base. The question that has come in is, can we still apply the same principle of requiring staff to take holiday whilst we are on the flexible furlough? And the answer to that is yes, you can. Those principles still apply. You will still be able to use the flexible furlough scheme to require staff to take holiday during those furloughed days. So yes, you can. It will get into quite a complex and complicated calculation when you are working percentages of the time that somebody is working, making sure that that correlates to the claim that you're making, to make sure that you top that up to their normal remuneration for those furlough days. But the simple answer is yes, you can still require staff to take holiday during the flexible furlough. Now, some employees might find that that is a little bit unfair because they're going to probably say, but I'm working. But of course, and you know, the question that they might be throwing back at you is, well, when am I going to be getting that rest and relaxation? Of course, this requirement to take holiday, you know, we are starting to get into the second half of the year. So again, managing that holiday requirement is quite key for a lot of businesses, particularly as it is supported by the government scheme. So yes, you can still use the flexible furlough scheme for holiday, requiring staff to take holiday. Do of course remember that you do still need to give them as much notice, twice as much notice as the amount of time that you need to take them off. But if you're going to incorporate that as part of the flexible furlough agreement, it will be there and you will have already served that notice, and it will then just come down to making sure that their pay is matched, you know, it is topped up accordingly. So I've had that question, I've got it in twice. So another question, if a previously furloughed employee is brought back to work either to do normal hours or reduced hours, can I put them back on the old furlough scheme if work dries up completely? Yes, you can. So even though the flexible furlough scheme is designed to try and get people back in and it is designed to try and get people back in and working, if the work dries up and there is no work, they can go back and you can then claim for the full furlough hours. So again, the scheme is there to be able to support businesses for the furloughed hours. In other words, the hours that an employee does not work, where they are ordinarily contracted to work. So yes, they can go back onto, you know, the full 5 days of no work. But the key thing is to try and get businesses back up so they can get staff back in. So hopefully that answers that question. Another question that has come in is, if someone has been shielding for 12 weeks and those 12 weeks have come to an end, can I insist them on coming back into work? So yes, you can, but I'm going to remind you again, is going back to that all-important return to work COVID-19 risk assessment. Make sure you carry out that return to work risk assessment. Make sure you've got those measures in place to mitigate the transmission of the coronavirus. But quite importantly, speak to the individual concerned. Speak to them about the measures you've got in place. And of course, if it is possible for them to work from home, try and facilitate that remote working. So I'm going to now go to the questions that are in the question box. I've seen it coming. There are loads of questions in there. So I'm going to spend the next sort of 10-15 minutes going through those questions. Of course, if anybody needs to leave at 4 o'clock, I understand. I've kept you engaged in today's webinar. Please do leave. Don't feel that you're going to miss out, because these questions will be collated with the questions and answers. So I'm going to sort of spend, as I say, the next sort of 10-15 minutes going through these questions, so do bear with me. So Michelle, you asked your question really early on, so thank you for your patience in waiting. So your question is, if an employee is furloughed on 80% until the end of July and resigns during this time, am I obliged to make his pay up to 100%, or does the month's notice he is leaving, or does the month notice he is serving in the, so I'm putting words into your question here, and I'll come to the answer in a moment. And is holiday due at 80 or 100%? So let's have a look at the notice question first. So he will be resigning, he has resigned, the individual has resigned. So it will, because the resignation is coming from the employee, you don't need to top up his pay. So it is an employee-led resignation. It's an employee-led termination. There is no requirement for you to top up his wages to that 100%. In terms of holiday is a different question. So holiday, you would be requiring him to take his accrued but not yet taken holiday during his notice period. So you'll be requiring him to take that accrued holiday during the July period. Any holiday days will need to be topped up to 100%, so he will receive his normal remuneration for those holiday days. So as an example, if he has 13 accrued but not yet taken holiday days, 13 days out of the 31 will be topped up to the 100%, but because it's so there is a crossover between his notice pay and his holiday pay. So for 13 days out of the 31, he will receive the 100%, but for the remaining days, he will only get 80% because it's an employee-led notice period. So Michelle, I hope that answers your question, but I will provide more detail in the questions and answers that will come out. So the next question comes from Jackie. Jackie is asking, can you ask staff currently on furlough to come in to cover holiday staff? So the answer to that is yes, you can. They've previously been on furlough, so you will bring them back in to cover them for holiday. Whether they then go back into the long-term 5 days a week or plus furlough scheme, yes, that is. But yes, you can bring furloughed employees to cover people who are currently working. So again, it's that communication, requesting them to come in back into work, how long that work is going to be for, and what's going to happen when that comes to an end. Are they going to remain in work, or are they then going to go back on the full-time furlough scheme, or are they going to come back on the flexible furlough scheme? In other words, are you going to require them to work some hours and be furloughed for some hours? Of course, do remember that if they come back into work, they get paid their normal pay for those hours that they do work. So Jackie, I hope that does answer your question. So Harjeet, we've got a question from you. Thank you very much for the fantastic feedback, Harjeet. So the question is, if I bring back staff on 1 day flexible furlough, does the government support the cover of 80%, or does it get dropped to 60%? So there's a couple of questions there. So if the employee comes back for 1 day, you will have to pay them 100% of their wages for that 1 day. There are going to be step changes in terms of the remaining days, which are the furloughed days. The government will support that for July. They will support it 80%, and they will also pay the employer national insurance contributions and the auto enrollment contributions, employer auto enrollment contributions. That will change in August. So August, they will still support the furloughed hours with 80%. However, you will then need to start making the national insurance and auto enrolment contributions. It will change in September, where the government will support you for the furlough hours up to 70%. You will need to top that up by 10% and make the employer national insurance contributions and auto enrolment contributions. It changes again in October, where it drops down to the 60% of those furloughed hours, and you will need to top it up on those to the 20% on those furloughed hours. So it is a gradual change. It's not straight into the 60%. So again, I hope that's answered your question, but again, I will answer that more fully in the Q&As that will go out. So Katie Adams, I've got a question from you. So if a member of staff has been put back on furlough for 2 weeks at the end of June, can they be furloughed part-time from the 1st of July? As I thought they needed to be furloughed for 3-week periods. However, does the 3 weeks, and I'm just getting more of your question, include part-time furlough? So the answer to that, there was a lot going on around furloughing people for the first time on the 10th of June, and that had to be for a minimum of a 3-week period. So if you are going to be returning staff on the flexible furlough scheme, as long as they've been previously furloughed for a minimum of 3-week period, they can come back in. So if you put them on furlough, so if you put them on furlough for the first time on the 10th of June, they would have had to have completed that 3-week period first, because that would have made them eligible for you to be able to make that claim. If they had been put on furlough, for example, on the 22nd of June, so that's after the 10-day period, they will still need to complete their 3-week period. They then can go on to the flexible scheme. Of course, if they are currently on if they're currently on the furlough scheme, you can bring them in next week immediately, and they can go onto the flexible furlough scheme. So I think I've gone a little bit around the houses there, but again, Katie, have a look out for my more detailed answer in our Q&A that's going to come out. So I've got another question here, and so the question is, can I claim unclaimed hours for March? So presumably the employee qualifies and is eligible for the claim, and you as an employer are eligible to make that claim. Yes, you can claim for unclaimed hours dating back to March, but do make sure that that claim is in before the 31st of July. After the 31st of July, you would have missed your opportunity to be able to do that. So yes, backdate claims going back to March, but I would encourage you to get your skates on and get that claim in sooner rather than later. So I hope that answers your question. I have another question. Oh, I think that was part of the previous question. So under the current scheme, so again, there are the step change. So any claims that are under the old scheme, so in other words, where there is no change to the scheme, so anybody who's on the original scheme where there was 100% furlough hours, so you were either furloughed or you were in work. If you were furloughed and you need to make the claims for hours that you haven't already claimed, as long as the employee is eligible and you are eligible, you can put those claims in. So again, as I said, I would suggest that you get your skates on to make sure that you do that before the deadline. So Kim has asked a question. Thank you for your question, Kim. So we have furloughed staff on national minimum wage. So when they come back on the 1st of July or later, they will need to go onto the new national minimum wage rate of £8.72. If they are then put onto the flexible furlough scheme, will their furloughed days be on the rate from March, which was £8.21, or will it be on the new rate? So again, this just identifies how complex making the claim for the flexible furlough scheme is going to be. So when they come back and they are going to be working their actual hours will be paid at the current rate of £8.72. But when you are making your claim for the furloughed hours, you are going to be making your claim on the previous amount that you calculated prior to lockdown. So that will be on the 2019-2020 national minimum wage. So again, the calculation on how you are going to be able to calculate the pay will be the same as on the original scheme. So again, you're going to be having these different levels of pay using different numbers for the different sort of parts of the claim that you're going to be making. So hours worked is the new current rates. The furloughed hours are going to be the previous rates. So I hope that answers your question, Kim. So next question from Joanne. Do we need to formalise a return to work following shielding on the 1st of August in writing? So there is no requirement, there's no legal requirement for you to do so, but our advice would be it is best practice to document, have that audit trail to be able to formalise that return to work. So that might be in the form of having that return to work assessment and a simple document. Sorry, I've just been distracted because I had a little bit of a wobble there in terms of voice quality, but it seems to have gone back. So again, best practice, have that audit trail in the form of that return to work COVID-19 risk assessment, and perhaps documenting just the discussions that have gone by between you and the employee that's going to be returning to work. So I do hope that that has answered your question, Joanne. So Donna has asked another question. Just listening in the last hour, it's become clear that I'm going to have to make someone redundant. How long does the process take, and is that something you can help with? Fantastic question there. So yes, of course we can help. Going through a redundancy process is a prescribed format that you need to go through, but the key thing about going through any redundancy is to make sure that it is done fairly and it is done reasonably, and that's where a lot of businesses fall down. What I will do is I will make sure that I get your details from you. I will drop you an individual email about our coronavirus crisis package, where I will talk you through the different requirements, and we will be able to take it from there. Absolutely, we will be able to help you. And redundancy is such, it looks like it's simple. It looks like a tick box exercise, but it couldn't be further from the truth. So I will definitely come back and I will help you on that one, Donna. So I will be in touch. I have two more questions left, which is great. I'm really whistling through this. So this is a question from Alison. Alison has asked, I have a staff member on and off furlough over the past few months and just put them back on furlough on the 24th of June. Can I put them on the flexible furlough scheme starting the 1st of July, even if they haven't been on for the minimum 3-week period? Which is a requirement of the previous scheme. So my understanding is yes, you can. So whilst you needed to make claims on, for the previous scheme, you can put them onto the flexible furlough scheme from the 1st of July. Just briefly, having had a look at the Treasury discussion, the Treasury directions that have come out, they start talking about what we call orphan days. I need to still understand what orphan days are, but I think this is what will particularly cover you in this particular situation. So yes, you will be able to do it. If in my reading I come across that's not the case, Alison, I will be in touch with you to say you need to stop, but that will certainly be early parts of next week. So again, like all my webinars, I do have that red flag warning that the information is only as good as it is at the time I'm delivering it, because this does move. Sometimes it is a moving feast and it changes overnight. But yeah, I will double check make sure that it doesn't change, but as at this afternoon, yes, you can do that. So one last question from Kim. Brilliant. Kim, you are most welcome, you know, for all the help and support I've been able to give you. So just as a quick recap, we do have that coronavirus crisis package that is available for all of you. We also have the flexible furlough calculator that will be able to help you manage that all important data for you to be able to put your claim in. So we do have that additional support. We also have the flexible furlough agreement, and I know many of you have been waiting very patiently for that, and again, I promise to get that out to you as soon as I've had an opportunity to have a look at the flexible furlough, sorry, not the flexible furlough, once I've had an opportunity to look at the Treasury directions that have come out this afternoon to make sure that the agreement that we have drafted and is ready to go is fit for purpose and is going to be able to support you. So, you know, the coronavirus crisis package, there are various sort of aspects of what we can help, so do get in contact. Just a reminder of where you can get that further information on our website, www.hrforuk.com, or info@hrforuk.com, or you can give us a call on 01455 444 222, and one of my colleagues will be able to help you. So I hope you've enjoyed this afternoon's webinar. We will be here again next week. I've just been reminded to ask you what topics you would like us to cover going forward. So my thought process for next week will be 3 days into the flexible furlough. I'm sure I will be busy advising clients over the course of the next couple of days on how to actually implement it. So my thought process for next week is, let's have a look at some case studies. Let's have a look at some real live questions that have come in and how we have been able to support businesses over the course of the next couple of days in getting that flexible furlough up and running. So do contact us today, and you know, if you found this helpful, I really appreciate your feedback. So Kim, thank you. I do appreciate the feedback that you have given us. And again, these webinars are only as good as what they are, and they are delivered for you. So let me know what you want and how I can help you to make sure that you and your business come out of this crisis successfully. So same place, next time. I'll see you next week, Friday. It'll be the 3rd of July at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much and have a brilliant weekend. Thank you, everybody. Bye for now.